Welcome to Jar of Genius. I'm your host, Russ Perry, and this is a podcast where we dive into the business of creativity. Each episode, I'll explore the minds and stories of innovative leaders and companies who have paved the way and are shaping the future for creative businesses around the world. From groundbreaking business models to extraordinary creative campaigns and the innovations of technology we use and will use ahead, I'm excited to help you not only run a creative business, but thrive in this ever-changing and always challenging landscape.
Hey everyone, I'm Russ Perry, and welcome to another episode of Jar of Genius. And I am here with someone who's swims in similar lanes. You know, we're both creative business guys. But I'm here today with Bryan Grant, who runs Bryan Grant Studios. Great name, by the way. And Bryan is a seasoned, I'd say, not multi-decade, but you've been doing it for a while. Creative professional in motion graphics, working for brands like Oreo, NFL, and many others I'm sure we can talk to. And today, Bryan, I'm so thankful for you to be here because we're going to talk about, I don't know, we're going to just go on into the depths of what creativity is. But I'd like to start with just a simple question. And that is essentially your definition of creativity. Like when I say, what is creativity to you, Bryan, what does that mean?
That's a great question. It's great to be here. Thank you again. That's a great question. I mean, I think that as an artist, creativity is something that, you think about, you execute, and if you're able to move the audience in some way, that's creativity, no matter what the medium.
Mm-hmm. Now, you're in the heart of visual. You're in LA, you're in California, you've been working for many brands, skipped over one, Marvel, you had big work with them. And you've probably seen a lot in terms of the industry, the type of work, the style, creative direction. How has creativity changed as a business since, go back when you first were trying to get your first gigs, working on it, studying, whatever it might be, to today, seasoned professional, huge big name brands that you work with. Has the business of creativity evolved in that time? And if so, what have been the trends that you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, I'll focus creativity more into motion graphics and design because I can speak to that best. Because as we know, creativity can be, anything.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, listen, I moved to Los Angeles about 22 years ago from Chicago. Went to Columbia College in the city, and it was great. I actually ended up teaching motion graphics while I was a student for directing films because I had previous experience in Detroit back then, doing bar mitzvahs and weddings and editing it and video and the whole thing. So
I love it.
I was the high school nerd, editing in my basement. Back then it was SVHS. If you know. Okay.
So you hadn't yet been burning DVDs or CDs yet. This was prior to that.
That was even before DVD.
Yeah.
It's funny. It was just at the cusp of that, but yeah. So, I mean, I started, just animating stop frame animation with a camera that I got when I was 13. So that really is kind of like when I started and, just moved different pieces on the table and, with my Sony, 8mm camera. But anyway, so when I finally, passed through college and, got to Los Angeles, I had to have my demo reel on DVD. And I had this conversation yesterday with a colleague where, now everything is, forget about just having websites, but everything's online. I mean, I had to literally, at the time, I could only afford 20 DVDs, burn those, and literally drive down Wilshire with a buddy, dropping it off, hopefully that, the people who need to see it will see it. Yeah. So it was a lot of, when they say hit the pavement, I know all about that,
Yeah.
So that was the world. But, I got to work with a lot of, advertising agencies as a producer, actually, and a project manager before I actually got into the creative realm, even though my experience was creatively, I was able to get work right away, which is rare, but I worked so hard to do that.
Right.
But I will say, though, that back when I got started, it was designing and animating the menus for DVDs.
Really? Yeah.
If you remember that.
A whole art form into itself. Did you ever hide any Easter eggs in the menu? Like if you click on this one bit, I remember there's always a few that had them.
Yeah. I was so green at the time. I probably didn't even think of that. Plus, it was so corporate. It was for Warner Brothers, and I remember it was for the movie with Tom Hanks, Road to Perdition, and that was the DVD. And so anyway, but that's what the majority of the work was then. I mean, of course, it was there was titles and all of that, but at least my start was the DVDs. And so, the start of my career really kind of happened. I was working for a place that's no longer, and they were in Burbank, and the clients would come in and sit over my shoulder. And rarely,
which, by the way, for all of our creatives listening, this is like the nightmare scenario, which remote work hopefully has alleviated a little bit. But I remember being in an agency setting and clients are like, let's do this together.
Exactly. I'm sure that you've seen a meme where, it's a graphic designer, with a client, if you're designing it with me, it's like 20 times more, where if I do it, it's going to be like, a quarter of the cost.
Yeah.
To your point. No, exactly. But this was actually pretty cool. I mean, the client was great, but going back to that story, the producer, the project manager at the place that I was working at wasn't always with me. So it was literally just me and the client.
Listen.
So that happened week after week. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I don't really, I can kind of do this myself.
Right.
And charge more. I could have teams. It's like I'm producer, project manager, I'm client relations, and I'm the designer and animator.
Yeah.
For weeks, so I was really kind of blessed by that opportunity because, cut to years later, that place, they went out of business. And so I kept in contact with that client. And then they actually became a real client once I formed my studio. So I think that years of doing freelance work and really getting my chops and really kind of, getting more educated with, the studio life. I opened up the studio and I guess the rest is history. But
so there's kind of two buckets. And I think I'd be really interested in your perspective, essentially, since you've been like at the epicenter of so much creativity out on the West Coast. There's creativity and there's art, and then there's the business of creativity and art. And I think some people kind of don't realize those are two very different strategies in life, and they get a little lost in one or the other, and they might, there's trade-offs and pros and cons.
Two totally different skill sets, by the way.
Right. So clearly you made a creative business decision. Do you think you had to sacrifice part of you as that kid and that creative doing the animations and just doing things for fun and whatever, or have you still fueled that in some way?
No, I'll explain it. Great question. Totally. So I think that in running a business versus just being a solo artist, and I love both. And on occasion, I absolutely still do freelance work with clients all over the world and producers who, I thank God. I feel blessed. I love what I do still.
Yeah.
And it's been decades later. It's wild. I remember After Effects 1, really. I don't know if I'm proud about that or not because I'm getting
old. Dude, we can age ourselves really quick. I remember when digital video output was so awesome.
Now that I think about it, it's not that cool. But anyway, no. But so in running a business, as an individual artist, I would, and in the very beginning, take my time, meaning that I was a perfectionist and it was hard to let things go.
Yeah.
And you can still be a perfectionist, but that was one of the things that I learned in business, where you have to get in the rhythm of turning out work. That doesn't mean sacrificing quality. That just means becoming a more nimble artist and really kind of focusing in on what's really important in the workings of a company where there are deadlines that you have to hit every day, small or large. And you can't just sit on one shot for a week, where if it's a passion project, of course. But I think I think that the refinement of my ability of where to put my time was focused more. And also, one thing that was critical is that there have been times when, and I'm sure everyone can relate, I'm sure you can relate, where you're the artist on the phone with the client who's giving you feedback. There's a lot of different opinions on this. But you can't take things personally. Like you can't, it's very dangerous. Like if you can have a producer who's just client facing,
Right.
awesome. Or if there's a group of you, if we're on like a team chat. But there was one thing that I really had to focus on in the occasions that I had to have all those roles. You have to be careful because the immediate knee-jerk reaction when you hear feedback is, how difficult is it? How long is it going to take me to do it? Can I do it? And then you try and negotiate either away from it or you kind of tiptoe around it,
Yeah.
And so you have to be very, very careful because that's not fair to the client. It's not fair to the project. So it's interesting. But when you talk about, the business part of it, that's why it's good where there are producers and their main function is to produce.
And I will say too, I gotta be careful. I'm a Western trained design. I got a Western design education at Arizona State University, not top tier school. So I say this as someone who has been in this cohort, but I also think there is a ego of designers, especially in America, that I wouldn't say doesn't exist elsewhere, but there is much more of a delineation between the work and myself and the art in other creative cultures that does seem to be a bit blended here, a little more so. Like if I'm critiquing the work, there's somehow I'm critiquing you or who you are or your inspiration. I don't see that as much. We have designers all around the world, Colombia, Argentina, Southeast Asia, and for them, this is like a job. They have a talent, they're skilled, they're there, but it's not like, hey, this isn't good. I don't like this. This is not working. It's like, cool. What do you need? Like, let's get to the conclusion that you're seeking, but they don't necessarily, or maybe they don't communicate their frustration as much.
No,
but
I've witnessed that too. That's true. Do you think that's our country, like as obviously like Western, like for the USA, or is it like Los Angeles and the big cities?
It's Western country. So same in the UK, Australia, like Western education. And I don't know. I think there's obviously an incredible output of creativity that we have and we export around the world. But there is, I think, more of a understanding of the lines of vocation in other markets.
Why do you think that is?
I mean, great question. Where's this interview me now? To me, I think it's because supply and demand, to be honest. I don't think there is as many creative jobs in these other markets. And so there is a sort of a hesitation to push the envelope, to disagree, to get out of line, to shoot, to shoot yourself in the foot by telling you what I think. Because unfortunately, if you lose that gig, it's a much tougher market to replace. And, that's obviously not maybe necessarily the best for the end creative product, but I do think it's created a more, agreeable side of working environment where it's like, it's like you get the electrician out, the electrician's going to do the thing. And if you're like, move the light here, the electrician doesn't get offended that you want to move the light here. He's just like, I'm going to do it. It's my job.
Totally. Well, it's so interesting because that brings up, speaking, when you mentioned like creativity and that, just that being like a very broad term, it is very personal.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it can be because it's your heart and your soul. And as an artist, you want everyone to love it, but in the business, you can't love it right away.
Right.
It's like, okay, that's round one.
Yeah.
This is working. It's not there yet. There's like in business, there's an understanding the journey is way long. Where like when
Right.
you're starting, you're kind of like, okay, I'm done. Like, you know, or if you're working on a personal project.
Or
Uh,
school itself, going back to the educational process, often the work you're designing is to get the approval of a teacher, a professor, someone who's saying yes or no, this is good or not,
and it's
which
based
creates
on
like, like I gotta like it's like emotional in that point.
and it's based on a task or two or three.
Yeah.
You know what I
with
mean?
with 6 weeks to complete.
Exactly, exactly.
In
It's like,
school.
okay, no, totally. I mean, it's like right out of school, you know, by and large, it's okay, well, how is your, you know, the task of like rotoscoping, that's all you're looking at versus like the full project.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, yeah, it is amazing. And so like cut to today with AI, which you know, there's been conversations for the last 5 years longer, but especially this year, it is wild. I don't know if you've experienced a shift in volume of work, but I have never had more people reach out looking for work from me this year than ever before.
Interesting. Unpack that a little bit. Why do you think that is?
Well, there isn't that much work.
Yeah.
There just isn't. Um, Specifically, and let me frame that more. There's certainly work out there. People are working. Don't get
So
me wrong.
you mean work as in people to work for you, not clients looking to hire you? What do you?
Correct. Yeah, and
Okay,
let
got
me
it.
reframe that exactly. Yeah, that was
Got
too
it.
broad. I mean singular artists.
Yeah, yeah.
Singular artist. There's an artist who 2D, 3D generalist, worked with this person for over a decade. He hasn't worked all year.
So
All year. And he's amazing. So it's not skill based. Um, you know, this person told me like they shave their rate. It's not even money. It's like it's
right.
wild.
Do you think creation is? Do you think it's a lack of, kind of economic and like creativity as a whole is just not creating as much, or do you think studios and the people creating things are finding other resources like Gen AI or off market, outside of the country resources?
Yes. I hope you love this podcast because I could do 10 more with you on different subjects.
I love it. We are just getting started in season 1, so I'm excited to bring on more guests.
But
and
this is only
repeat
season
guests.
1?
Yeah, well,
I was told
sort
this
of.
is season 4. I'm out of here. No.
It's an continuation of a previous podcast, but we rebranded.
Totally. I think that as a motion graphic artist, designer, I think that we need to very actively look at different areas of work. So what does that mean? I think that entertainment and by in Los Angeles and in my experience and the groups I work with, and a lot of my clients and artists are all over the world, but I live in Los Angeles for the last 20 years, so I can speak to that because I talk to people almost all the time. I think that the pivot for if you're a motion graphics designer listening and like, well, what else can I do besides like title design or maybe, sports branding or products. I think the move is client side. They're not hiring as many advertising agencies or a lot of brands. They've been doing this for years. Have an in-house group, which helps on a variety of reasons. When you have like full-time folks, they can work on a variety of projects and it's probably more profitable. I think that, entertainment, as far as motion design, I'm hoping there's a rebound, but things like the hospitality field or the medical field, sports, live events, I think that people need to be a lot more agile. And a lot of us who were counting on the entertainment work need to kind of, have, I think there's been a rude awakening, 100%.
Right.
And And that goes back to, the business conversation of as an artist, since so many of us are freelance folks, how do I pivot? How do I take my skills and apply this in ways that I haven't yet? That's the challenge.
I mean, I speak from, like you mentioned, you have a lens that living in LA for 20 years. I have a lens that have been running for Design Pickle for almost 10 years for B2B services. But here's where I think an opportunity is. And I know that I've employed, not just for our clients, but internally and in-house, motion graphic artists, video editors since the beginning. I think a huge opportunity is the consumer level storytelling and branding in spaces like B2B, tech, business, think about healthcare, all of these places, that there are great examples of companies that do it well, but there are, and I see thousands of clients, there are far more companies that don't think about 101, tell a story, make it emotional, connect with your audience, be creative, because they think we're in security cyber software. And that's not important.
And when you say companies, you mean like motion houses, design firms, right?
I think for me, it's the companies that exist in those spaces that are not as sexy as, say, entertainment, not as sexy, say, as in sports, that have been high consumers of artistic talent in many ways. For me, I think there's still a huge opportunity for creative artists, firms, whatever it might be. I would love to see the visual marketing agency for dentists. I am the best at it, and we tell stories nationwide in an emotional, compelling way. I think the reality is there are far more industries that are not communicating visually in a profound way that would gobble up and pay handsomely for this stuff.
Totally.
And,
Yeah, no, totally. And when I say hospitals, I guess healthcare.
Yeah. Now there are some brands, but I'll tell you what, we are humans at the end of the day, and we respond to compelling and creative messaging. And if I got an insurance renewal in the mail and it was a QR code to a cool video and a story or whatever, maybe a bad example because you kind of always auto renew your insurance, but there's some other, you know what I mean?
Yes, it's bringing dry categories and bringing sexy back.
Exactly.
I just said that, and now that's
okay. We're aging ourselves all of the time in this podcast.
Yeah. No, but really, I mean, listen, when I first got to LA, I was working on an ad agency, again, the one where I was a project manager. And this is even the challenge was back then. One of the clients was a big car insurance company.
Yeah.
That category is not sexy at all.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I'm talking 20 years ago, and it's still not, but it's gotten better, I think, a little bit. But still, exactly, the drier categories, I think there's a huge opportunity.
Right. Now, Bryan, when you're looking ahead at the next 10 years, what's getting you excited? What are some things that you're thinking about and experimenting with or seeing or doing that you're feeling that this is something worth really going deep along?
AI, and I'll explain.
Yes.
A lot of people are terrified about it, especially folks, creative artists, fear of they're going to be replaced. No one's getting replaced. Let me repeat that. Right now, today, of course, I say that next week, we're all, but in all seriousness, I think that especially if people are paying attention to folks like NVIDIA right now, who are building unbelievable hardware and software, folks that are even Photoshop right now with their AI tools within Photoshop,
yeah,
are extraordinary. I use that today. Not to like create something from scratch. I'm talking about little moments or like, expansive fill here or, not to get too techy, but I strongly feel that AI will help in the tools, whether it be by and large the technology of rendering, the way that we compute, a lot of the high files and 3D work, as well as the plugins. They'll be 10 times more powerful. I mean, as one example, I'm sure you remember having to rotoscope from scratch in After Effects.
Oh, yeah. Like forever.
Now, of course, there's tweaking, but comparatively from where we were,
there's free web tools that can do it now. Like free web tools. You just mask it and go. Like
our
it's crazy.
iPhones can kind of do that now.
Yeah.
Just touch, in the outline.
Yeah.
That's masking, but still, that's wild. So I think
what is this improvements in efficiencies tools? Like I want like for you, right? Not the industry, but like for you, Bryan, like if you're gaining time back, maybe money, it's cheaper, faster, whatever, where are you focusing that surplus? Like how are you leveraging that then to do what? Is it to create more, to chill, to, like what is that? How is it changing how you're working?
It allows me to assess efficiencies within the company, how we can tighten things internally, as well as more time to gain more clients, to build
work on the business,
to do the things where, as studio owners, we hire folks to do some of the work while we're focused on bigger picture things. Gives me more time to travel and meet with clients face to face and not do another Zoom meeting. To be able to actually see an artist that I haven't worked with and, fly or drive, into LA and spend an hour or two with them. I think that the more efficiencies behind the scenes allow me to do the reverse and be more human and be more accessible in person.
I love it. I think about music and however many years later, I forget when the like 3D Tupac show was a while back. Like I remember that was crazy. It was like through like projection image and artificial stuff. And now you have the Apple Vision Pro, you can attend a concert and do all this, yet concerts continue to be huge business for the artists, for the labels, because people thrive and want human and real. So I feel like to me, when I go to bed at night and I think about all the changes, I look at how many technological, virtual streaming, replicative experiences you could have in that, in entertainment and music and that. And yet the live human component still matters for different reasons than it might in our business. But that is like, I almost imagine a future state 5-10 years from now, where human created, human interaction, human something is like the value proposition and the premium thing people are paying for.
Totally. And I think that we got a huge wake-up call after 2020.
Yeah.
Craved community.
Right.
Because we weren't allowed to be around people.
Right.
And of course, like, in different countries, it was even worse or more lax than us. In different states, obviously, we're way different, but absolutely. And I do feel that the movie theater and the idea of the movie theater will morph into something even bigger and better. Like, in other words, you remember in the, you're probably younger than I am, but like in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, going to the movie theater was this awesome experience. It was kind of like an event.
One of my first dates ever, going to the movie.
Totally. Of course. Yes, totally. And it was special. And now it's not. Everything is so accessible. and we're in our living rooms. More content is on our phones and our watches and in our face. That, going back to what you were just saying about, the value of community and people, I think will, in the irony of like AI and digital and everything's accessible, and especially with the goggles, going to the movies will be, and I think it's going to be more than just movies. I think there'll be more offered in those settings, but I really don't, if I were to put my money down, I don't think that a lot of the big national movie theaters, I think those will stay and they won't be demolished and put into condominiums. A lot of them will stay and they will evolve into something new.
Right.
At least
I hope so.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, or my dream is there's just way more private room karaoke places like there are in Asia, because they lack those. I feel like, there's some in LA, but, not as many in other countries. Maybe we can just convert them all to that.
Yeah, exactly.
Connect. But it's about connection. I think that's the main thing. So
totally. When is the last time you went bowling?
Well, I've been to a place with bowling quite frequently because it's those like family entertainment centers, and we'll go play games, do laser tag, do bowling.
Exactly.
But like you mentioned, in the evolution of the movie theater, it needs to be more than one thing, because whether it's ADD or people's attention span or just the variety, because people like different stuff. And I think it has to be maybe something more, right? Like to be able to have a movie or, really great food, or watch a concert in that space with your friends or whatever it might be. So love it. Well, Bryan, we try to keep these short and tight, and I feel like we could keep going on talking about AI tooling, some war stories from your client past, but I'd love to give you the opportunity to allow people to know how to connect with you, whether that's your business, your websites, your social profiles, see what you're doing, see how you're evolving, and to definitely stay in touch if they want to learn more.
Absolutely. Thank you for that opportunity. It's my name, BryanGrantStudios.com. That's the site. You can find me on LinkedIn. And then feel free to email me. It's the same. It's my name, Bryan at BryanGrantStudios.com.
Awesome. You can ask Bryan about his early days of Adobe After Effects and see all of the original projects. But Anyway, everyone, thanks for listening today to another episode of Jar of Genius. Please do check out our website, jarofgenius.com. We'll have all the show notes for Bryan, as well as links and other great episodes that have already been posted and are coming up ahead. So we appreciate it. Bryan, thanks so much for tuning in from California. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, buddy.
Take care.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Jar of Genius, sponsored by Design Pickle. To learn more about the topics discussed, get access to any of the links mentioned, and submit ideas for future seasons, head over to jarofgenius.com. Now, if you enjoyed the show, you know the drill. A solid rating on your favorite podcast platform helps others find what we are creating and join the conversation. We'll see you next time, and never forget, creativity is your secret strategic weapon.